Reading comprehension, theory and goals for instruction. Explicit comprehension strategy instruction is the support that students need to glean meaning from text. The number one most important thing to remember about reading comprehension instruction, or just reading instruction in general, is for students to become independent strategic readers. We want them to be able to take whatever we have taught them and transfer it to their own independent use. What do strategic readers do? First, they begin with a purpose. They recognize that different goals require different types of reading. They realize that the strategies they use depend in part on the purpose that was set. They personalize and transform the text to make it become part of their semantic memory. We'll talk more about that in a minute. They constantly coordinate strategies. They modify, they adjust, and check until meaning is created. They persevere. They have reading stamina, and they don't give up when it gets difficult. They utilize their reading skills and strategies to be able to read any text they desire to read, and we need to teach students how to do that. Remember that prior knowledge and vocabulary are the two most important components to reading comprehension. First, we teach the vocab. That will support their ability to create the pegs on which to hang what they've learned and what they've read. And then when they are reading new material, they will use those pegs as their prior knowledge to comprehend. Comprehension instruction occurs before, during, and after reading. This is explicit instruction. Before students read, we want them to activate their prior knowledge, set a purpose for reading, maybe predict and ask questions. During reading, we want students to be making connections, monitoring their understanding, generating questions, and staying focused. After reading, we want students to reflect on their reading. We want them to summarize, we want them to question, we want them to reflect, discuss, respond, and even more importantly, we want them to evaluate what they read. Teachers need to support their students in understanding why a strategy is useful, how it is used, when it is appropriate. Teachers demonstrate and model strategy use, usually through think alouds, and this is a powerful way to show students how to use those strategies. There are basically two theories on reading comprehension that I'm going to briefly summarize. There are several out there, but there seem to be two that are mentioned the most in research. The first theory we're going to talk about is the simple theory, and thus its name. It's pretty basic. The simple theory is basically just a relationship between the linguistic comprehension, sometimes known as language comprehension, understanding the language, and word reading skills. Both need to be present for comprehension to occur. Here is the simple theory in pictures. Listening comprehension plus decoding equals reading comprehension. Here is another visual that relates to the simple theory and basically categorizes readers into 4 quadrants. And this semester we've been focusing on struggling readers, and they would be the readers that would be in the lower left-hand quadrant. The poor word recognition, poor language comprehension, these are probably going to be the students that you're writing your Tier 2 interventions for. The second theory is the schema theory, and this is Anderson and Pearson. And this is a widely accepted theory on how readers comprehend text. They believe that reading comprehension emerges from the reader's successful use of prior knowledge, their schema, to construct a coherent and useful meaning for the text. Good comprehension would be the ability to merge the new information with the existing information. And this theory explains why prior knowledge is so important for comprehending what we read. If we wanted to visualize one specific schema held in someone's brain, and this particular schema would be on dogs or canines, you can see that there's all kinds of information that is webbed there. Dogs that they've known, dogs that they've heard or read about, and this is kind of the personal information. And then on the other side of the schema is all the facts that they've learned about dogs, practical knowledge, scientific knowledge. So this is the schema that's used every time the reader reads about dogs or text that relates to dogs. So there's two thought processes that go into how schemas work. The first one is called assimilation, and this is where a kid sees a four-legged animal, this four-legged animal, for the first time. The person knows they have an existing schema about dogs because they have a pet dog. So even though this new dog doesn't really look like their pet dog, they can assimilate that information and realize that not all dogs look the same. When we accommodate information, we realize that our schemas are being challenged. For instance, the existing schema is that his four-legged pet is a dog. But then someone points out this new strange creature that doesn't necessarily look like his dog, but still has four legs. So the person needs to say, okay, not all four-legged animals are dogs. With accommodation, we have to begin creating new schemas. So this particular person, this kid, has to begin developing a new schema for cats. So another way to look at the schema theory is how a reader actually uses their schemas to comprehend text. So let's say a reader is reading a book about bears and they've been successful at comprehending. They then begin comparing the information that they got from that book to their prior knowledge, to their existing schemas. That information that fits into their existing schemas, they assimilate. The information that doesn't necessarily fit into the schema about bears, they will begin to accommodate that information. So for instance, let's say in this book about bears, they read about pandas and they find out that there's two types of pandas. There's the giant panda and the red panda. And they find out that the red panda isn't even really a bear. It's related to the raccoon, and scientists have given it its own classification. So therefore, the reader needs to accommodate or begin a new schema about the red panda. Okay, that includes our very brief overview of reading comprehension instruction. What we have gone over are the characteristics of what a strategic reader is like, what they do, and our goal is for all our readers to become strategic readers. We've also talked a little bit about reading theory, and the two theories we talked about were simple theory and schema theory. We are now going to move on to best practices in writing instruction. Writing is a very complex skill. The act of writing is a cognitive process that involves comprehension of ideas, expressive language, and mechanical skills. All writing instruction must be based upon what children already know. And from this visual here, you can see that written expression is based on what they know about reading and the word, oral language, vocab, phonemic awareness, and so on. But it's also based on what they know about writing as far as letters, sounds, and phonics, spelling, concepts of print, written conventions, text structures and genres. All this prior knowledge goes into a child's ability to write. Quick overview of the writing standards and the expectation for writing content. We need to teach students about the different types of writing, fiction, nonfiction, and all the genres within those types. We need to teach about purpose. We need to teach about the production and distribution of writing, and here is a great place for me to remind you how important it is to find authentic purposes, authentic audiences, and produce authentic artifacts in our writing. It's very motivational. We need to teach students how to research and how to find credible sources in our research, how to build knowledge and how to present knowledge. And then last, give students a range of writing, and be sure you are including writing in some format every single day of instruction. Theory on writing instruction. Writing is a complementary skill to reading. It is highly related to the process of reading. Writing is highly related to the process of reading because readers and writers are both constructing or composing meaning. As students mature and read more complex text, their writing becomes more complex as well. Throughout the stages of literacy development, practice in writing, daily practice in writing, increases the understanding of how authors compose text. In turn, this deepens students' reading comprehension. The nice upward spiral that occurs is the more students improve on their reading comprehension, they get better at writing more complex text. And the upward spiral continues. Consider the following. Teachers spend a significant amount of time teaching students to read, but spend less time teaching them to become good writers. However, if teachers focused on writing instruction, students would become better readers. We all know readers who can't write, but do we know any writers who can't read? It's an interesting thing to think about. There are 6 pillars to writing instruction. Students need large amounts of time to write every day. Students need teachers who model good writing. Students need the opportunity to read and study other writers through the use of anchor text. Students need choice when it comes to writing topics. Students need to write for authentic purposes and for authentic audiences. Students need meaningful feedback from both their teachers and their peers. And I would say the older students get, the more important it is for students to get feedback from their peers. So let's connect the struggling reader to writing instruction. Writing can be used to increase a reader's struggle with comprehension. Many struggling readers learn to read through their own writing. My daughter is an example of that. It can be a source of motivation for our struggling readers. And by identifying a topic to write about, something they want to learn about or something they're really into, they are more motivated to read about it. Project-based learning is an example of that. And we also know that if readers are motivated to read something, they are able to read text at a higher level. Writing can be used to teach difficult skills and strategies in reading. For instance, nonfiction text structure, which is a very difficult thing to teach readers, but once you teach them how to write the different text structures, identifying them becomes much easier. We also can teach story grammars and plot lines through writing first. Once they have filled one out and created a text using that story pyramid, then they're much more likely able to identify those components in their reading. Struggling readers and writers need graphic organizers to organize their ideas, period. Use graphic organizers in your writing instruction. They need to be given choice in the topics they write about, and be careful of how much feedback you give writers so you don't discourage them. All writers need opportunities to write to learn. They need to participate in on-demand writing, and they need to write about topics of their choice. Teach the genre pyramid in your classrooms. All readers need to know about the different genres of writing, but also through those genres of writing, we are also teaching our students about the different genres of reading. Use rubrics and checklists in your writing assessments, and teach those rubrics and checklists before they begin writing so students know the expectations for the writing projects. Okay, we've come to the end of this very brief overview of reading and writing instruction. I would like you to now go back to the Symbaloo and click on the reading and writing quiz. Complete that, and then you can proceed on with the online lesson planning activity that is also linked on your Symbaloo webmix.